What's up, Model FAs? David DeCelle here, your host of the Model FA podcast and CEO of Model FA, as well as co-founder of The Exchange. And if you haven't checked that out, go check out school.com/exchange and see what that's all about. But I am very excited for our guest today. And before I introduce him, just a special thank you to Jason Mirabella, who was a recent guest on our podcast. And he is the one who brought Joshua and I together. And Joshua holds a PhD in behavioral finance, but he's not your typical academic. Dr. Joshua Wilson was first an award-winning advisor, repeatedly recognized by Forbes for growth, and he successfully built and sold his practice. Then, as CEO, he led the turnaround of an RIA firm to a successful acquisition. And now he applies his unique neurobehavioral approach as a growth partner for advisors and fintechs. And he helps those firms connect with prospects at a subconscious level, all in an effort to accelerate growth. But with that said, Dr. Joshua Wilson, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Dave. It's great to be here.
Let's rock and roll. So my first question, and this in full disclosure, comes from someone who, and that someone is me, who could not wait for school to be done. So, so, so I am curious to kick things off. What inspired you to pursue another handful of years of schooling to acquire your PhD?
Yeah, I think part of it is just I like hard things, and this seemed pretty hard.
Fair.
There was both personal reasons and professional reasons, David. I would continually see that people like me, just people that I love and people that come from places that I come from, average people are scammed by experts, by biased experts. People often don't know who to trust. And I wanted to understand. I got to the point where I was being frustrated by seeing, this expert says this and this expert says that, and I wanted to understand the advanced statistical methods and the analysis to see bias, to see where it was being introduced. Was it in the data? Was it in the methods? And see how studies were being misinterpreted. So I wanted to be an expert for people like me, someone who could really cut through the noise and provide reliable insights. And then professionally, it was about striving for mastery. I realized, I'd become pretty obsessed with behavioral finance before going back. But I realized that to truly master it, I couldn't just read about it. I have to do something. I have to get into it and understand how the studies are completed and really not just get past the surface level that everybody kind of gets the, education on heuristics and read a few popular books. But pursuing the PhD allowed me to dive deep into the research, conduct my own studies, and just gain a level of expertise that I couldn't have achieved otherwise. And, I'd started this, and I think the last thing, David, was I'd started this over 10 years prior. And a couple semesters in, my dad was diagnosed with cancer. And at the time, I was working for TD Ameritrade in Nashville, so it was easy for me to just go back to North Alabama and see him. And so I just called it off and said, I've got to spend time with him while I can. And he ended up living longer than was expected. He was given, 6 to 8 months without treatment, and he ended up living over 3 years. And then by then, life had changed. And so I kind of got to the point where I knew if I didn't finish it now, it would never get done. And I just couldn't deal, David, with thinking of I started something and let something like that stop me. And knowing that my father would have wanted me to go on and finish
Mhm.
that degree. And so I had to finish something I started.
I love that. Yeah, I'm making an assumption here, but I'm sure it was tougher going back after taking a break from school than it would have been if you went from your undergrad, directly to your doctorate. I have a client, Berkshire Money Management out of Massachusetts, and one of their team members is named Michael O'Brien, and he's just recently graduated school, and he was like, "Should I take my CFP? Should I wait?" And I'm like, "You're in school mode, dude. Like, go do that while you still understand and know how to learn, because that's one of the most difficult things is like
Yeah.
relearning how to learn, after." Years of likely reading, personal development and nonfiction books. So you go back to a textbook and you're like, damn, this can be dry.
Absolutely, absolutely. I try to look at the bright side of it. You're exactly right. It was hard to get back in that mode, and especially of just putting that time on the calendar. I came in before work, I came in after. I worked all weekend, but I'd say that in a way it was good because a lot of the things I was just trying to get through, I suddenly had an interest for. It wasn't just okay, I got to get the grade for statistics. I really understood why I should care about statistics and why I should understand the statistics and these advanced statistical methods that have been developed by behavioral science that are beyond what's being used in finance, right? Behavioral science is really what has developed these advanced tools. So understanding why I needed these tools and something that I was eager to be applying is I already had the job in mind that I wanted to do, and that's the big difference for me is when I was younger is I was just trying to get the check the box, and now it was I'm trying to understand the skill because I'm trying to be able to apply this skill. So there was so that was had that to propel me forward, which I didn't have before.
Now, when I read your bio, one thing that I like about you is you're not someone who happened to go to school and now you're trying to serve an industry in which you don't have, any experience in. Like
Oh.
you were an advisor. I guess how did that experience, being in the shoes of, the folks listening to this podcast, how did that influence your approach to behavioral finance?
I'll start with a story that I think something that kind of keyed me in on something that was being left out. And I was working a lot to try to leverage myself because I had grown quickly. And it was, well, I say quickly is I started in the industry in 2007. So I just got my teeth kicked in for a couple of years. So when I say quickly, it was
Like a
slowly.
slingshot. A slingshot is probably a better one.
Exactly. Exactly. It was a slingshot that finally when it took off, it took off. And I noticed that there were a few people that were Googling me, and they would find my graduation speech that I gave at Brown University where I went to undergrad. This wasn't even available via video yet. It was just they were reading the speech. And I would notice that a meeting would go really well, and they would sign up with me. It'd be easy. And then at the end of the meeting, they would let me know, oh, yeah, we looked you up and read this speech, and then start telling me about all the things we had in common and that sort of thing. Or they would lead off with it. And I started noticing this happening more and more. And I thought, okay, there's something here that I'm missing that's beyond just build rapport. And so that really got me to start searching for how do people connect? Can I understand connection? It's beyond just rapport, it's beyond just common ground. It's beyond how is it deeper? And can I work these connections into getting to know me early? I was interested in behavioral finance, but it seemed like behavioral finance, at least at this time, and I still think largely today, is about education, not about integration. And it's about working on existing relationships. And here's the heuristics here's the mistakes people make, and here's how to spot them, and here's how to educate them. But I didn't really feel like that was changing minds or changing hearts, and especially wasn't changing hearts. So I it looked to me like it's not so much what you know that matters, it's what you can apply and then integrate into your practice. And so for me, it was my experience as an advisor was behavioral finance was largely education and talking at people, focused on just building rapport and then transferring information. I'm going to build rapport in order that I want to transfer information. But I believe that the connection can happen much earlier in the process. So we often end up staying at this surface level and offering this general advice as experts without focusing enough on the coaching, how to actually integrate these things at the micro level. Are you doing it well? Besides just checking a box of, well, I did what he said. I know what confirmation bias is. I can define it. There's a big difference in a definition level of learning and being able to regurgitate the definition versus applying it, let alone integrating it at a level that it's not direct and in your face, that it's appealing to you as at a subconscious level, beyond that doesn't require you to get into the front of your brain and to process this information like people are listing right now. You're being required to process this information, right? That is a mental load. So my thought was I need to understand how to go deeper, how to understand these subconscious drivers of decision making before we've come into these issues that behavioral finance is talking about. There's a difference in seeing a sickness and calling it a name, right? You have COVID, and here's what you need to do about it. You've got the flu, here's what you need to do about it. There's difference in treating something versus preventative. I want to think of behavioral finance as health care, not sickness care. And that's really what got me into this is my experience as an advisor was, hey, we're trying to treat problems. We're trying to just build rapport and then give information. How can I create a connection beforehand? So much of behavioral finance has been after your client and treating these things. I want to think about before. How do I get clients? I was a young advisor. I want to get more clients. I want to grow. How can I market? How can I speak to people? How can I create processes that help people to connect with me subconsciously before we get to the point where they've got to get in their prefrontal cortex and start making decisions and start really processing information.
Um, I'm going to hit on what you just said, but I want to go back to something that you said at the beginning of that. It's because I just realized this. So, Brown, I went to Bryant,
Oh
and
yeah, the
yeah,
Bulldogs.
I'm curious to know was Fishco around when you went to Brown?
Fishco is absolutely around.
Very nice. Did
Yes,
they accept your
on and
fake
off.
I?
They were continually getting shut down and then put. Then
Well,
they're
that's because they were accepting mine and my friend's fake IDs at the beginning of college, so they probably kept getting busted for
So
that.
I briefly worked at Prime Time, if you remember Prime Time.
I don't remember prime time being, in Smithfield and not Providence. Usually, we found a spot like Fishco and just went there,
Yeah,
once a week. So, but yeah, small world.
it absolutely is.
So back to business. So you just alluded to, what behavioral finance is. One of the things that I'm curious about is, if I'm listening to this and just me personally, I'm like, okay, cool, like that makes sense. But like, what does that look like in practice? Like, what are some examples of facilitating a conversation in such a way that leans into the behavioral finance aspect of that conversation?
Yeah, I I've challenged people to think of the conversation, like I said, David, of I want to focus on even the pre-client conversation. I feel like there's so much focus on how do I have conversations with my existing clients. I want to attract clients. So I try to help advisors understand the conversation that's going on in people's head before they even hire you. When they're going to your website, when they're considering you, or maybe you're working with centers of influence. For example, I had a client that it was an institutional client, and they said, "Hey, we're having success with this channel, and but we opened up this other channel a year and a half ago, no success. We've opened up this. We got two more channels that are being opened up. One 6 months old, no success. Another one that's coming. I don't know if we should just keep opening up new channels because we've only ever had success at the first one." And so my process is going back and saying, okay, hey, ultimately what I found was they're trying to sell everybody the same thing. They're trying to sell what they have rather than meet the emotional need of the client. Okay. So they've got their deck, they've got their pitch, they've got their value statement. And what they're looking to do when they ask for help is how do I make them want what I have? And I've got different parties that are very different. Um, I had one that I had a lot of success with referral partners. And so I had a very large institution reach out to me that was getting a new referral partner relationship and asked me if I was interested in leading their referral partner organization. And I asked them if they had salespeople lined up. And they said, well, yeah, we've already got these salespeople that are doing this thing. I'm like, well, that's a completely different channel. They're selling to people that have the leads have come from this way. Yeah, yeah, but they've got capacity. We'll use them for the same thing. It's like, well, hold on. It's a different channel. The people, there's a middleman now that has his own interests, his own comp plan, his own reasons for making decisions. So if you're coming at them, selling them like a client who doesn't know anything, that's very different. So and I'm giving you a couple of examples, but I'm going to come back and say part of it is understanding the client journey and who your client is at this stage. If you're coming in front of a center of influence, that's your client. It's not saying to that center of influence, here's what I do for your clients. It's here's what I do for you. Here's why you should want to work with me. Okay. And oftentimes that center of influence may have one, three, five, 10 other options. So how are you positioning yourself on their short list, the eye level? This is one of the things I talk about. Is like, imagine it's a grocery store. The stuff that's at eye level gets more of your attention. So how do you position yourself as being one of those firms that's at high level? So part of this is understanding, okay, who is your client? Where are they in the journey? Number one is who's your client right now? Is it their center of influence? Is it the advisor that's going to give a referral? Are you going directly to a client? And where are they at? Because where they're at is going to determine what they're focused on as well. Whatever you're focused on is going to be seen to your brain as being primary, as being important, as being causal. Okay. So when you're having this conversation, it's where are they? And then second thing I would think is also how are they speaking to their how are you speaking to their problem? Are you using the words that they use? Are you actually just taking your solution and calling it a problem? I ran into this recently with a client where we're producing content, but it's not getting us anywhere, gets no views. Uh, Prospects don't care about it. When we try to send it to them, no one cares about it. And it was like, but it is. And I said, well, you've got to sell the problem first. You've got to speak to them at this level that you understand their problem. And you can build that problem before you build the solution. And this is where it gets tough because it's like, well, this is the problem. And the problem was in this case, I think it was what was it? I think their solution was rebalancing or something like that. And it's one of those things that we want to talk about rebalancing, what you get out of it, but no one comes into it looking for that. No one comes into it looking for rebalancing. No one comes into it for an education on that. No, they want a problem solved. They want a pain point. They want to see that I understand the pain, and this is the point in my journey where am I aware of the pain? Am I aware that someone else is aware of the pain? How do I feel the pain and how do I connect it to my emotions? Are there things that I can do to trigger them to gain their attention that I see their problem, I understand it before I start talking about solutions? It's way more important to demonstrate an understanding of the problem than it is to demonstrate an understanding of the solution. If you own the problem, then you're the natural solution. So a lot of this is not so much of, how do you communicate in the conversation? It's how do you communicate before the conversation that's cluing them in on you are the right person for this problem. Now I can go deeper into worldview and these other things. Why do people choose people? How do you gain attention? And all those sorts of things. But the bottom line is before you start talking about conversation techniques, it's that pre-conversation technique that's really gaining the credibility. By the time you get in front of someone, now it's time for you to start convincing them. People don't want to be convinced. And the modern client journey has changed so much. Used to, when I first got into business, this was when this was kind of dying out. Is the strategy was get in front of somebody, build rapport, right? If I can just get in front of them, I can build rapport. Now that's changed. Why? Because your retirees now, they grew up in a time where they were being introduced to the internet. Most of your retirees now, your boomers are on Facebook. Your boomers are text messaging. They're gathering information online. And if you're somebody in your 50s, then you got the internet when you were in your 30s or late 20s. I got the internet, you and I got the internet when we were in our teens. So we grew up in that native environment. So now there's no gate where you have to go see someone to get information. No, the standard is you have to get to know someone before you're even willing to go see them or have a conversation with them. The modern client journey has changed so dramatically, so much more is expected up front, which is great if you're someone who wants to scale, if you're willing to learn how to escort someone through that journey.
Well, it's interesting when I was an advisor, and for those of you listening to the audio, I have finger quotes up because I worked for Northwestern. So at the beginning, I was slinging insurance, and I had a hammer, and everyone was a nail, right? So if no matter what their problem was, I tried to make that a solution. So to your point, until I kind of saw the light and started doing actual planning towards the back half of my career as an advisor, that's what I did. So to your comment about, advisors, in that intro call or whatever stage it is where they're trying to share with them, hey, here's our capabilities, here's what we can do. Instead, it's what I'm hearing is like meet them where they're at and help identify and address their problem and see if you have the solution, which you likely do. And if not, put them in front of someone that does have that solution. The other thing that you said, in which we're 1,000,000% aligned in, is how to properly, how should I say, manage and facilitate your COI relationship. So, a lot of folks are like, oh, I don't get, referrals from the CPA. It's like, well, the CPA knows that you're looking for referrals, and it's almost like you're looking through the CPA, and no one wants to call out the elephant in the room, but you both know why you're there. And frankly, it's almost like, oh, I can't wait for this meeting, to be done. So one of the things that we coach folks on, and we have a whole course on this inside the exchange, is helping your, say, CPA in this example, with two different things. One, help, and this is all under the assumption that they're open to this conversation, of course. So identifying the problem, right? So past that, helping them uh, be more intelligent in front of their clients
Yeah.
on areas in which they're not necessarily experts in, right? Give them additional insight to other planning opportunities beyond, say, taxes, in which they can add value in. And then number two is you guys are in the same business selling different things. So things that have worked for you, such as any referral strategies or marketing strategies or operational efficiencies, like sharing the almost serving as like a pseudo consultant for one another. Like to your point, is adding value to them, like they're your quote unquote client, whether that's informal or formal, and treating them as such and trying to add as much value to them as possible. And what ends up happening is when they have an opportunity to refer, they're not doing an eeny meeny miny mo across all their different advisor partners. The law of reciprocity kicks in because when you guys get together, they always get something of value from you as opposed to the other guys and gals who, just pay for their lunch in the hopes that they get an introduction at some point. So, unless I'm misinterpreting what you're saying, it seems like we're pretty aligned in how to approach COIs.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I'd add that easy beats competent.
Hmm.
You don't have to be the most competent guy, but if you're the easiest to send a referral to, and easy can mean a lot of things. Easy can mean that you're easy to talk about, that you've simplified it to a point where it's the value proposition is something they can easily remember and go to, or the referral process is easy. You don't have to I don't have to verbally talk through all of this, and I don't have to give them the pitch. I don't have to remember things. I don't have to put work into understanding your value, that I can put all the onus on you, right? There's multiple ways you can make things easier, but the folks that make it the easiest, low cognitive, we are biased. Our brains, this is where a lot of the neuro stuff I talk about, our brains are biased towards laziness. So when you're working with someone and you say, I want to make this lazy brain friendly. So when you're thinking about your process, you got to get into their perspective, not just your perception that they want to grow the firm. You're talking to a CPA. A solo CPA is different than someone who has a business of CPAs. Now this is going to trickle down. Do I have to do the training? How I've got to think about how do I make this as easy as possible for their laziest brain. I may have them triggered and interested right now, but I got to make this interesting and doable for the laziest version of them.
And I mean, ideally, when I make introductions to people that frankly I love and they do
Yeah.
great work, um, the way that I go about making these introductions is pretty simple. I say, listen, I've already done my due diligence on them, and they are some of the most competent people in this particular area that you'll ever come across. So just assume that that's the case. But what I think you'll really like about them is they're just kind. They're a kind human who you're going to get the sense, which is true after you're meeting with them, that they actually understand you and that they truly do care and they have the competence to back it up. So my introduction is leaning more so or less so on their capabilities and more so on them as a human. And I feel like when you're thinking about a CPA again in this example, you don't want the CPA to be tasked with sharing the ins and outs of what you do. That should be an assumption. Hey, I've done my due diligence on them.
Yeah,
They're
yeah, yeah, yeah.
wonderful,
Great.
and lean into the personal aspect. Uh, so I found that to be more successful and more likely that someone walks into that meeting excited to be heard and rather than having walls up because they don't want to be sold.
Absolutely, absolutely. And I will say that one thing that you can add that folks can add to that process if they're the one that, and this is tricky because I be careful of doing too much sales training on the CPA themselves. But if you're the one giving the referral, okay, one little trick you can use is give them a choice. And what I mean by that is, hey, I've done my due diligence on multiple firms, and my concern is they're all, as you said, they're all competent. They've all checked all the boxes, but I like to think about a personal level. And so then you can give. I've got a couple people that I've got in mind right now after our conversation. And now what you've done is you've said, I've done all the funneling, but I
Mm.
got one more question for you because I got a couple people in mind, and then you give them a piece of information and let them choose their own journey. Now you're not saying it's got to be this is the only way, because now it sounds because with certain people, not everybody, this is all about you can sense this. Is this person going to be kind of holding back? Are they sensitive to being sold, or are they really close with you? If you're close with them and you've built that rapport and you've built that trust, go straight forward. But if you need to kind of hold it back a little bit, give them a choice. And so, for example, I had one once, and I said, I got two guys still in mind here that meet all your criteria, but so I got to ask you this: is it important for the person that you work with to be someone you'd want to have a beer with? And then
Are,
leave it at that. What do they say? And if it's like, Oh no, no, it's this is business, business, business. It's like, okay, great, because I really think this guy Stan would be great, but just want to let you know he is business only. He is straight to the point. Like he is not rapport builder. He does not want to talk football with you. He doesn't want to talk baseball with you. He is straight to the point, but he'll do a great job for you. But if that friendship kind of rapport building was more important, and I realize a lot of people they start with business and then they want to build a relationship. So if relationship is more important, then this other guy's going to do, I think, just as good a job, but X. So it kind of allows so that letting you know that this is how he is. Now you've also got a chance to tell him what to expect.
Mm,
So now you've created what I say you've created a checkbox, right? So now you've given him emotionally what to expect in this relationship. Is this guy is very straight to business. Or if he says, I like somebody I can hang out with, goof off with, I was like, all right, kind of thought that was the case, but just want to make sure. This guy Jason over here is a little bit more fun. I think you're going to love him. He's competent, whatever, whatever, but he's the kind of is going to have a little more fun with you. And so it allows you to then, okay, now it's checking the box. And you can tell that to Jason as well as, hey, this guy chose you because he likes to have fun. But ultimately, you gave them a choice right there at the end, one path or the other.
I love that. Um, before we wrap up, I want to kind of future forward a little bit. So, with the introduction of AI over the last few years, um, I am of the belief that AI will further empower clients and consumers who were already DIY people to be better at DIY. I think that there may be some people who would prefer to DIY but don't have the tools and the resources to do that. That may flip over, but by and large, the people who are working with an advisor or would like to work with an advisor, my theory is that they'll still work with an advisor, regardless of how AI progresses. And perhaps I'm wrong, but I think that AI for advisors helps augment a number of different areas of their business. And, one just to uh, name an example is AI note takers are literally saving, 80, 90% of administrative follow-up time that the advisor or their team was responsible for, allowing them to have freed up time to hang out with their families or develop more business or work on higher level activities within the business. So with that said, what I'm curious about from your perspective is what role do you think behavioral finance will play in the future of wealth management as it relates to, the integration of AI as well?
Yeah, I think that AI raises table stakes. And what we've been seeing this for a long time anyway is what's considered just enough, what's considered table stakes. I mean, what was innovative 10 years ago is table stakes now. What was innovative 3 years ago is table stakes now, right? So AI just continues to raise the bar of what's expected. It raises the bar of what's expected from a firm, expected from an advisor. It raises the bar of what you would require from an advisor in order to choose a human advisor over some tool, right? Right. For example, the robo craze. And I think a lot of people have seen the robo craze and they're like, oh, well, ha ha ha. Everybody said that the robo advisor craze was going to end all of our jobs. And it'll be the same with this. It's not so much that it's going to take your job, but it is going to take some jobs. And the reason it's going to take jobs is because it's going to allow the best to be able to serve more. So the differentiation is
Mm,
not going to be having the best tools, the best CRM, the most AI enabled XYZ, because you're just going to be a year or two behind everybody of the first movers, right? This better, that's a trap, right? Of trying to just keep up on you've got to do those things. That's table stakes. So this will allow advisors that are really focusing on the human element, the behavioral finance, the psychology, the connection, It will allow them to scale in ways that they couldn't scale before because you're not overwhelmed with these small duties that were taking up so much of your time. It will allow you to be able to scale yourself because you are speaking to the one element that they can't get. At the end of the day, I'm not going to draw comfort from a machine. At the end of the day, when you achieve something amazing in your life, David, and you know, you and I haven't known each other too long, but if imagine we were buddies and we'd been through it together. I know you were an athlete at some point. When somebody else throws that hand out there, smacks hands, gives you a big hug, it's that human touch. And when things are tough, when you need to hold on, it's not the machine that says, here is what the code says that I should say. It doesn't feel right. You're not going to feel it.
Mm.
Even if it's being trained to say emotional things, it's not sincere. Just like you can detect when a human is not being sincere and is just rehearsing a line. Oh, I'm so sorry for you. Oh, that's so hard for you. You can tell. Okay, so these human elements, you can't scale out of human contact. So the better you are at that, if you don't have that, they can just go get a machine. If you are machine-like. And so the days of machine-like advisors that are just check the boxes and pitch and pitch and check the box and pitch, those are going to be harder. A lot of the lower end advisors are going to be hard, especially the guys in the middle, I think, because there'll always be a demand for the lowest end as well.
Well, I think first of all, I haven't heard it articulated the way you did as it relates to it's not going to replace advisors directly, but the advisors that become more efficient and increase their bandwidth, them and their teams will replace other advisors because they can handle more
Yeah.
clients. And I also think that, the call it mid-tier employee of a financial planning firm that's ripping through plans or administrative stuff, like their roles will start off in being augmented and they'll either rise to the occasion to work on more higher level duties, or there's will be technology that can replace them. So those folks need to continue to focus on, their development and their skill set improving over time.
If you are, let me speak to my young folks now. If you are getting started in this industry, work on your people skills. Why? Because the bar is so freaking low right now. The
Yep.
bar is so low because the new generation, and you and I were at the tail end of it. We had to be social, right? When I was in college, texting was just coming out. Right now, everything's over. I was at Brown when Facebook was introduced. Right now, everything's different. So the bar is so low on talking to other humans. If you can be anything in your class, I don't care if you're valedictorian. I don't care I care that you can talk to people. I care that you can create relationships. Because like you said, that paraplanner that's doing 10 plans a day or 5 plans a day, now they're going to be able to do 30.
Hmm.
Okay, so now there's fewer of those paraplanner jobs because you can do so many of them, right? You need more people that can talk to people. To work on the people skills, get the sales skills, connect the people. That is where the money is going to be for the next generation because there's a dearth of it already and the needs going up.
So when we bought our house, actually coming up on a year ago, at least at the time of this recording, um, we had a cleaning crew, like a moving cleaning crew, over, and their son came with them. I want to say he was like 10 or 11. And um, my wife and I were just chatting with him, and I felt like I was talking to a colleague. Like I
Mhm.
was like, shit, like this kid is no way is he 10. Um, so we were talking to the parents afterwards, and we were like, your son is awesome. What like we want to have kids. Like, how did you do this? And they basically said, we don't have them on, technology ad
Yeah.
nauseum, right? We don't use an iPad as, today's binky. And also, anytime we interact with our clients or we interact with our friends, he's there interacting and having conversations as well. So if you want to get better at talking with people. It's not groundbreaking. Just go and talk to people. And over time, you'll get better at it. So I couldn't agree more. It's not difficult to stand out
Yeah.
today because there's so many people that are complacent in their lives, in their work lives, and the bar is pretty low. So one of the things that I ask all of our guests is a book that's had an impact on them. And I'm curious to know why you chose this book, what the impact is and why someone should consider reading it. Now, similar to me, it's probably difficult to pick a book given the bookshelf behind you that is filled, unless it's just for show, but I highly doubt that. But the book that you chose was The Freedom of Self-Forgetfulness by Tim Keller. I have not heard of, and obviously as a result of that, read that yet. So tell me why you picked that.
Yeah, so it first off, it is a short book. It is like 50 pages, and it's a small book too. You can read it in one reading. So it's something that you can read every quarter, every year, whatever. But it explores kind of this idea of gospel humility and meaning thinking not thinking less of yourself, but thinking of yourself less. So it's using the Apostle Paul's teachings to talk about our egos. You know, it's not a stoic sense of ego is the enemy or whatever, but it's understanding that ego is it's empty, it's fragile, it's painful, and he argues that really freedom comes from finding our identity in Christ other than others' opinions or our own achievements. I mean, oftentimes, when we're proud of something, we're proud of it because it's something that someone else doesn't have, right? And when somebody else gets it, we're not so proud of it anymore, right?
Interesting.
So it challenges me every time I read it to how much am I thinking about myself? Because the more I think about myself, the less free I really am, and the free to really find joy in what I'm doing and the journey itself rather than the destination. Because I mean, how many times have you done something that was such a big deal to you? You got to the top of the mountain, and it's now you just feel sunk and it's not what you thought it was going to be. It's just like, okay, I got here. Now all I can see is the next bigger mountain, right? So to me, it's a refreshing read on self-worth and humility in a culture that's really obsessed with self-esteem. One of the things he talks about at the beginning of it is, throughout history, most civilizations were thinking that, hubris was the cause of most pain in the world. Now we attribute everything to a lack of self-esteem.
Hmm.
And it's a very deep thought to just think about that and then read his words on. Like I said, short book, but it always challenges me to how am I thinking about myself? Where am I getting my joy? Where am I getting my worth? And it challenges me on a day-to-day basis to keep myself balanced and aligned.
I love it. Well, Dr. Joshua Wilson, I appreciate your time. For everyone listening today, we appreciate your time and attention. But before we hop off, if someone's interested in learning more about you and perhaps how they can work with you, where is the best place to find you?
Yeah, find me on LinkedIn. I'm on all social media. I'm on YouTube channel Dr. Joshua Wilson on YouTube. But look me up on LinkedIn. I've got some other things. I think by the time this episode comes out, I'll have released a few other things of ways to work with me as well. But best place to find me is LinkedIn.
Awesome. Well, I appreciate your time. Thank you, everyone, for tuning in, and we'll catch you on the next episode. Take care.
Thanks, David.